Welcome to Business as Unusual. This is the live stream, as we just experienced a few minutes ago with a few technical difficulties, but we're going to explore all kinds of pressing issues and emerging trends that are shaping the business landscape. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat, and I'm going to try and get to all of them today. We even got some advanced questions, so I'm really excited to kick off with that new feature that we introduced this year. I'm Kathy Steele. I am the CEO of Red Caffeine, and I'm your host today. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Red Caffeine, we are a growth consultancy, and what that means is that we build and execute growth strategies for ambitious mid-market organizations. And our service offering includes a senior level or C-level marketing leader. And it really helps a team embed in an organization and scale rapidly without hiring a lot of internal resources. So I want to give a little full disclosure today that Kirk Allen, our guest, is a co-member of mine in my Vistage group, and I'm really new to Vistage. So I have been having sort of one-on-one lunches, breakfasts with our crew, and Kirk and I had lunch a few months ago, and I had obviously known a bit about Sloan. I've been a longtime Cubs fan forever, but I left the lunch thinking, I just had lunch with the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world. And he has to be on BAU. And luckily he agreed. He's so gracious to be here today, even though it's a really busy time. So Kirk, we're just about a week away from the spring training, Cubbies 2025. There's so much exciting things going on at Sloan Park as you're getting ready. As I can imagine, I've got a new player to introduce, Kyle Tucker. But today we are going to just talk a little bit about baseball, but we're going to talk a lot about some other B words. We're going to talk a little bit about branding. So more specifically, we're going to talk about brand positioning. We're going to talk about business, family business specifically, and positioning, brand positioning. So, and how that type of strategy with brand partners can really amplify a business in the marketplace. So officially welcome, Kirk.
Thank you very much, Kathy. It's nice to be with you.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to have you. And would you share with our guests and attendees just a little bit about you and Sloan and a kind of secret that's not on your professional bio.
Sure. So I am one of three brothers. All three of us work in the business. I'm the oldest. And we are the fourth generation at Sloan Valve Company. Sloan Valve Company was founded in 1906 by our great-grandfather, William Elvis Sloan. And in the fifth generation of the company, we actually have an Elvis in Luke Elvis Allen, who is my youngest nephew. But we've been in business for many, many years. We've always been located here in Chicago. We're largely a U.S. Commercialized product offering, although we have exported to over 72 countries over that entire time. And I am a co-president and CEO. My brothers are both co-presidents with me and CEOs, and we've been operating as the Office of the President since 2008. Sloan manufactures commercial plumbing products. So any commercial or institutional building you go into, you're likely to see our flushing systems. Guys on the call are really familiar with standing at the urinal and doing this or having it flush on its own. We have a very large market share in the U.S. market for that and are growing our international presence as well.
Yeah, just a fabulous story. So thank you so much. Well, I'm going to kick off with asking a question from somebody, that we're familiar with in the network, Kathy Carroll. She's a former mentor of mine. She's an author and coach in family business. And she asked just such an interesting question. I think there's just so much legacy. There's so much tradition. So how do you kind of balance that tradition and innovation and structure with more flexibility and customization? So how do there's a lot of tension in what we did and where we came from and those historical foundational roots. But businesses have to evolve, they have to change. So how do you really balance those types of tensions in an organization where you're working with your brothers or other family members?
Well, I would say that it is an interesting balance because tradition is very important at Sloan Valve Company. You can't be a family business for 119 years without having a lot of traditions. I would say I come at the question a little bit more. Instead of using the word traditions, there have been a number of habits. And so not all the habits were particularly good. When my brothers and I took over, we endeavored to steer the business in the direction of being a process focused and process driven business. It had not been that way up until that point. It was really the hard work of all the people that were there, and we needed to, in order to grow and continue to remain strong, we recognized that we needed to systematize what we were doing in a more meaningful and practical way. But in deference to the tradition, we always try to be very respectful and cognizant of how what we're doing affects our employees. So I think we've been able to strike that balance. Also, when it comes to, comes to innovation, our father realized in the early 80s that, we were a one-trick pony. We had the flush valves, and that was it. And new competitors were coming into the marketplace. Margins were getting squeezed. We needed to really expand our product offering, and so he spearheaded the initiative to get into sensor-operated plumbing. So that would be sensor faucets, sensor flush valves, among other things. And that has been really the driving force at Sloan since that point. So, we continue to innovate. We always innovate on our core platform, our traditional platform, but we drive most of our initiatives and innovation into sensor plumbing, the next generation, what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, and we had a number of questions. There was Sheila Stafford had asked a question as well about traditional and family-oriented businesses, and that's striking that balance between tradition and innovation as well. I feel like, when I was looking at your brand overall, where I see it show up a lot is in like social media and places where you're really highlighting, some of the core values of the business beyond what it says on your website, and really demonstrating like dedication and community in some of the initiatives you're doing, both externally with, in the marketplace, but internally as well, and how you celebrate people and, get recognized for your culture and those types of things too. So
yeah,
kudos.
recognizing our employees and valuing who they are and what they bring to the table has always been really important at Sloan. And, that is a tradition that my brothers and I really pride ourselves on carrying forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just I think it's so important, and it feels authentic when you are a family business that there's no two ways around it. You just can't get past that, especially, with the interesting dynamic of your leadership structure. So you talked a little bit about that as you introduced yourself and sort of the structure of this co-presidents or co-CEO. Like I don't know if I've ever heard this structure prior. I know I've known a couple of people or organizations that are led by two leaders, not three. And frankly, we work with a lot of family businesses, and so I'm really, really interested in how that came about. Like how do you divide and conquer all, good, bad,
Sure.
ugly.
um, well, first of all, I will say that my two best friends in the whole world are my two brothers. We live in a about a mile and a half triangle here on the North Shore, and our families are close, our kids are close, and we see each other all the time. We talk to each other and socialize. So there was a connection between the three of us before we marched down this road. But what took us in this direction most specifically was in 2001. Well, start a little bit before that. My father ran the business for 31 years, and for the greater part of that, he did it hand in hand with his first cousin, Bill Sloan. And now they carry different titles. Bill was an executive vice president, where my dad was the president, but they were very close, and they made decisions together. So we had a good example when it came to that.
Okay.
In 2001, Bill Sloan passed away from a heart attack, and I was talking with my dad, and I said, "What do I do if you have a grabber when you're pulling up your socks in the morning?" And he says, "Well, you call an emergency meeting of the board of directors and you declare yourself the president." I said, "Okay." So I went and chatted up my wife about it, and she is, really insightful in things like, family dynamics, and she knows exactly when I'm not loving an idea. And she says, "Well, you don't seem too pleased with that." And I said, "Well, I kind of always wanted it that way, but my brothers now are my partners. We own the business in equal proportion, and they're engaged with the business. They're every bit as smart and every bit as talented as I am, and I really didn't want there to be a layer in between us. I wanted us to work as a partnership." She said, "Well, talk to your dad about it." So the next day I talked to dad, and he says, "Well, yeah, okay, that makes sense." He says, "You got a close relationship with the family business practice at Loyola University here in Chicago. Um, why don't you ask them?" So I reached out to the head of the program, and he said, "Oh, amazing timing. We're getting so many inquiries about shared leadership structures, and we've just been wanting to do a project." And amongst their student staff, they engaged a project, and about 3 months later, we got a big, thick binder from them, and it had, the structure, uh, governance, communication plan, conflict resolution. It had a list of a half a dozen other companies that operate with a joint leadership structure that we could reach out to and get their take. And it's been since we took over at such a fabulous time in July of 2008. So, we really had to dig in as a leadership team at that time. But it's really been a fabulous thing for the business. We focus on different things. I sit over sales and marketing. That's been my background my entire professional career. And my brother Jim has, you know, quite a few patents in his name, and he sits over research and development. And my brother Graham is happiest when he's got a wrench in his hand, and he sits over supply chain and operations. We have shared responsibility over the supporting processes, IT, obviously finance. We're all interested in that, and human resources. But it works. It's worked very well for us.
Oh my gosh. I love that you shared, just a ton of different resources and how mindful, first of all, like just how brilliant that you went to your father and just kind of pushed back. I know it's super challenging to kind of bring different thinking to the table, and luckily for you, he was just really open and willing to kind of hear you out and really rethink the structure. So it just sounds like you took all the right steps. So
Yeah, and at 84 years old, our dad still is chairman of the board, and is one of the greatest resources the company has, as well as an unbelievable mentor for Jim and Graham and me. And he has done an amazing job of. He said at the outset, "Okay, I'm handing this over to you. I reserve the right to question what you're doing, but at the end of the day, it's your decision." And believe it or not, he's lived by it.
wow.
So it's been really amazing
Okay. Well, that's atypical as well. So
for sure.
I mean, I think about it myself as a business runner. It's difficult to even delegate to, really smart people that you bring onto your team. So I definitely know that, there's so much good that comes from it, but it's not the easiest thing to do. It's easy to say and not always easy
Yeah.
to action. So I want to like I want to get into the sales and marketing stuff, dying to get in there, but I just wanted to ask a couple of quick things about it. You guys have, it sounds like you've all worked in the business. You've worked in different capacities. I remember you talking about, going into college, and you're like going abroad, and you did some kind of humbling sort of career jumps that kind of set you up. So could you just talk a little bit about like some of those expectations for family members in terms of doing things outside the business, doing things within
Sure.
the business?
Sure. Well, to start with, the first time I worked at Sloan Valve Company, I was 7 years old, operating the switchboard, which was one of those old plug switchboards.
That's really
I was kind of channeling my inner Lily Tomlin for those who remember that. But then subsequent to that, all through high school, Jim and Graham and I in the summer would work in the factory, and that's a phenomenal experience. And it was, you don't love it when you're in the moment, because your buddies are spinning a whistle, lifeguarding on the beach and stuff like that, and you're up at 5 o'clock to be at the factory for when the whistle blows and everything. But we get to see every aspect of our production process, and that was very informative, very helpful. The only department in the entire company that we've never worked in is final assembly, and that was because our father said, "I'm not paying you to sit in air conditioning." So uh, we got that experience, and then it's our unwritten family rule. If you want to work in the business, you have to get your college degree, and then you have to work outside of the business. Um, and I, being not the smartest of the three, was selling radio in Lake County,
mm,
and my two brothers were dive instructors in St. Thomas. So
wow.
that differed quite a bit. Um,
Gosh.
but after that experience, all three of us, and it was different times. I'm 5 years older than my youngest brother Graham, and after that, when we started getting actively into the business, each of us went to work at one of our independent manufacturers rep offices. And so I was working with our rep in Arizona, Southwestern Mechanical, who's, I'm proud to say, still our rep, and an excellent rep at that, and one that I learned um, more from than I can possibly list. My brother Graham was at our rep in Southern California, and my brother Jim did sometime in New York City and also in Boston. So we got to experience the customer interface and interaction and things like that. After my time doing that, I was engaged. My dad. I was voluntold to that I needed to go and start a joint venture down in Mexico to open up our Mexico operation. We did that joint venture with Moen Fawcett, and it was a great relationship for the time that it ran. Um, Moen, after about 10 years, Moen started focusing more on retail, which is not our ball of wax. So we went on our own and formed Sloan in Mexico, and it's been an incredible growth engine for the business, and is one of our strongest international markets to this day.
Yeah. Well, I just love, I think it's really valuable for anyone that's coming up through into a leadership position to do different jobs within an organization, whether it be ops or working on the factory floor, getting into sales and marketing. I mean, you just really don't know until
Mhm.
you see it firsthand. And it's just such a humbling experience, but just an incredible rich opportunity to learn so much about an organization to do different jobs. So very,
Yep,
very, very excited.
absolutely.
Your father was pretty smart. So
I
all
think
right,
so.
let's switch gears and talk about the strategic partnerships, brand amplification. So you've been a partner with the Cubs, the official water efficiency partner with the Cubs for 10 years, right? It's the 10-year
Yep,
anniversary right now.
yep. 10-year anniversary at Sloan Park, correct.
Yeah, yes. And I remember, we had season tickets and I remember seeing Sloan branding go up and I'm like, what's going on? This is so interesting. And as things sort of rolled out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really incredible. So, for those that are not familiar with that experience or how you've partnered, you have been able to take your brand and connect it to the experience in the restrooms at this very iconic park in Chicago, Wrigley Field. And so talk a little bit about, this, how this idea came to be and, just sort of kind of the, who thought of it and how it came to be.
Sure, sure. Well, uh, even long before the partnership, my brothers and I had some very close friendships with some senior execs at the Cubs in the marketing department, largely, and Sloan has been in Wrigley Field since before there was ivy on the walls. So
Oh,
we've been there, but they were planning the new spring training facility. They were planning some the significant renovations that they've done to Wrigley Field, and my middle brother Jim and I both went to school at Arizona State, so we have a connection down there in that regard. And these friends at the Cubs were certainly aware of that, and we got pitched on taking the naming rights down there, and it really kind of coincided with an interesting dynamic in our marketplace. That being that, you know, we invented the flush valve, so it's like Kleenex. It's people in the industry call it a Sloan valve, even if it's not ours. And that group of engineers and specifiers that had that kind of recognition of our brand and our product offering were starting to age out. and engineers and specifiers were coming into the marketplace that never knew anything, but there are a number of different companies that make these products. So we realized that we needed to draw their attention to the Sloan brand and get them connected in a meaningful way, so that we could have the opportunity to present the value of our products and offering. So in what was it, 2014, late 2014, we made the decision to take the naming rights opportunity in Arizona. So it went from being Cubs Park to being Sloan Park. And this is, as Kathy mentioned, this is the 10-year anniversary of that engagement. And then shortly on the heels of that was the major renovation at Wrigley Field. And part of that renovation was updating all the bathrooms. And so we had a great opportunity to be a part of that. We worked very closely with Populous, the architect that designed the renovation. And I think that we've demonstrated our value in guiding product selection and things like that, and getting what the specifier wanted on the job to kind of match the look, and all those sort of things. So it's been an outstanding relationship, between for us on our side, and I think the Cubs would say the same on their side.
Yeah, I feel like, once, because I felt like at first I was seeing it all kind of unfold, but once you see your brand sort of connected, you can't unsee it. Like, I don't think I ever looked at a faucet label before, but now when I go to O'Hare, I'm like, oh my gosh, Sloan, like it is so, you can't unsee it. And I think that's
Mm.
really the incredible story, is how, even though, you're not only in front of specifiers when you're at Wrigley, you just became such a common brand and recognizable to so many through these types of partnerships. And so talk a little bit about, you have also some like really not in your face but messaging, and it's not just in Wrigley or in Sloan Park. You've got it in other locations where you sort of highlight efficiencies, but it's always Sloan, and a tagline or something like that. Talk a little bit about some of the placements of messaging throughout those types of experiences.
Well, in spite of the fact that our product offering and our sales strategy is expanding beyond just the flush valves and faucets, the water and water conservation is really the underlying strength and virtue at Sloan. If you go back to the very first valve produced in 1906, that was a water conservation product because it was replacing the tank on the wall with the pull chain, and those would fill with 7, 8, 9, 10 gallons of water. And here you have a valve that uses the line pressure in the building to flush instead of the weight and gravity of the water to do the flushing. And so it was really kind of a novel technology, but it also saved quite a bit. And I think everybody, everybody's had the experience of their toilet won't shut off at home and stuff like that. Parts wear and things run like that. Those tanks on the wall back at the turn of the last century were notorious for leaking. So on top of flushing 11 gallons of water every time they flushed, they leaked like a sieve. So there is a strength in water conservation, and that's why our tagline is "Water connects us," and we feel that really rings true, particularly today. Water scarcity is at unheard of levels all around the world. including here in the U.S. And we take it as a responsibility to really steward that wherever we have the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just knowing that, I forget, there's like a national day where you guys did a little mini promo of a guy, like a paper roll running around. I mean, there's just so many angles where you've been able to kind of team up your product and, making responsible choices, or if, there's no, I think there's just no actual facilities in so many places in the world. And I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have had any idea about that if I hadn't seen that public service announcement.
Sure. And we've expanded our view of where we historically were water conservation focused. We're now sustainability focused in general, and we endeavor to make buildings more efficient, easier and better to occupy and utilize. And we try to minimize waste. Our flush valves are manufactured with 98% recycled content, so it's inherently a reuse product, and so we endeavor to follow a sustainable path whenever we can.
Yeah, I love it. I think the other thing that stands out to me is just how authentic it feels to. It's not just gimmicky. It's truly like who you are. It feels like you truly love baseball. You're going to be there all season. Like, I mean, so it's not outside of the lane. And it seems like to me, and we didn't really talk about this, but I'm starting to see that you're using this type of partnership and alliance with not only your case studies, but is this something that you're, using as part of your overarching awareness strategy in other facilities where you're doing the installation of your products, like NBA Los Angeles Clippers, Logan Airport in Boston. Those were some of the case studies I saw about rethink the restroom.
Yeah, we realized, the relationship with the Cubs opened our eyes to the value of putting that sponsorship together, putting our brand in front of people. They don't have anything to do when they're in the bathroom, but read our billboard, which is nice. And so we've created a number of sponsorships. You mentioned the Clippers, we have the Clippers, Golden State, Texas Rangers. I mean, there's a bunch of them now, and we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with those great organizations and help them on their journey to conserve water, and appreciate their fans because they recognize it, they pick up on it. I meet people all the time and be like, "Oh, I saw the poster for that at this place or that place," and so it is generating that awareness, the brand awareness, and connecting it with the products in the bathroom, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you just can't unsee it. So
I'm
talk.
sorry about that.
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, I have a friend that is in bathroom marketing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had never thought about it. But you got a captive audience that you can take advantage of, and for certain products, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to be in front of people. So, what about I was thinking about like business impact. So have there been true, trackable results or ways that you're able to leverage this partnership that are, you're seeing more ROI beyond what or
Sure.
market?
After our first year as a sponsor down at Sloan Park, Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, asked me if I felt like we were getting value out of the partnership, and I said, "Oh, absolutely." He says, "Really? Tell me about it." And I said, "Well, I mean, I think I got the first 3 years of the contract paid for." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I got a job that I wouldn't have gotten, and it's a big job, and it's the margin on it is going to allow me to, pay for it. He says, you can actually track it. How do you know you know it? I said, well, purchase orders are usually a good signal, but there we do track our specification rates in a lot of different ways, and it's easy for us to see work that weren't going to get that we have gotten as a result of, particularly of Sloan Park, and that's because we bring quite a few people within our value chain, architects, interior designers, engineers, wholesale distributors, contractors. We bring them down to Sloan Park to enjoy a game, but while we're down there, we have a facility that's a mile away that does all the manufacturing for our fabricated sink division. And so we take them for a tour of that and then bring them to the tailgate and, have some hot dogs and some beers, and then they watch a game, and then maybe we go out for dinner, stuff like that. So it's generated a lot of really good relationships, a lot of really enduring relationships, and has really elevated Sloan's visibility.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I did get a question, fellow friend marketer Steve Kroll asked, big Cubs fan as well. In addition to sponsorships, and is there other ways that you're identifying to get in front of prospects in the target market? Like, can you talk a little bit about some of the other things that you've done to increase?
We really focus on on demand generation, a lot of different ways. We're represented in the U.S. market and many international markets by independent manufacturers, reps, and their job is to create demand and pull it through local distribution. So we've always done that. We have always done a lot of training. We do a lot of support. We host a lot of events with local chapters of AIA or the design community. So those things, those are things that we've always done that we continue to do. One of the newer things that we've done that has been really, really impactful is we created a mobile showroom. So we have a trailer showroom. It's really nice, done all on the inside. It's really pretty, and it travels around the country and from rep territory to rep territory. And the rep is, schedules it with a firm or at a location and invites people, and they get to walk through and see all the things that we offer. And so we'll typically have someone, one or two people from the rep firm will be there, and then a regional person that's a Sloan employee will be there and talking about the different products and how to get them specified and what options are available. So it becomes a little bit of an educational opportunity as well as just a product showcase, and that has been phenomenal for us.
Yeah, I love that idea. I honestly, love your showroom experience. I hope we can have a Vistage meeting there and experience that. But it looks like there's a lot of interactivity that's baked into that experience, as well as product placement and optionality of some of your products too. So
yeah, it's amazing when we've been around for 119 years, and we have people through our showroom or through the mobile showroom, and they say, God, I've been specifying your products for 30 years. I never knew you made that, and so it's a great opportunity.
Yes, the plague of everyone that does more than one thing. That's why I wanted just hot dogs with no ketchup, of course. But so, thinking about that, there are competitors in the space. So, and you are privately held, and I believe you shared that there are some competitors that have taken on private equity investment to scale. Like, how are you staying nimble, or beyond some of the things we've already talked about? How are you competing against somebody that may be more well capitalized, or what's the strategy there?
We are a privately held business, and so by dint of that fact, in large measure, we're within capital constraints that a lot of our competitors aren't. Our three largest competitors are publicly traded, so they have large war chests and can really spend in the marketplace. But I think that our advantage, being a family business, affords us the opportunity to look out further into the future. So often in publicly traded businesses, you're um, a slave to the quarterly call, and if something's not performing within a quarter, it gets canned. And so we can look 4, 5, 6, 10 years out in the future, and we can make a play in a marketplace and not have to have the immediacy of returns that a publicly traded company would need to have, or a private equity firm would need to see. So I think that's our biggest advantage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate, and I think for other smaller organizations that are kind of the David Goliath scenario, we always like to hear, those are, to me, being more nimble, being more scrappy, being more hungry. And when you're a smaller business, you play a lot harder sometimes than the guys that are just being fed opportunities. So
Well, I think one of the things that is kind of a projection of the culture of the family is we really preach intimacy with the customer and really understanding what they need, and they're really there is no to a customer from Sloan. I mean, if they've had something that's way out of warranty and they're having a problem with it, we take care of it, and the marketplace knows that. And so we are super responsive to customer needs, whether it's training or support in the field. We're constantly trying to iterate designs to be more practical for our customer base, and that's been a big advantage for us.
Yeah, I love it. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about international expansion. So you talked about, the fact that nationally, that's really been the bread and butter. Obviously, North America, I would include Mexico and your success in Mexico. Talk a little bit about, how have you gone into new markets internationally?
Um, that's a pretty interesting thing, because as I mentioned before, we've been exporting product since the early 1900s all over the world. And that was by virtue of the fact that a lot of international projects were being designed here in the United States, and so the specification of the local specifier would be exported to the marketplace. Um, that has limited, viability. It's not a strategy. It's just something, some good fortune. Um, so when we when we really started trying to make a presence in the international marketplace, what we realized was, around the world, there are a lot of different standards for our type of product. And so we had to learn about the standards, we had to learn about the customs, and really design products specifically for the market where they would be utilized. And that, for a company our size, that is a lot of work, and takes a lot of doing. And our penetration, what I would say, our meaningful ongoing penetration into the foreign markets, kind of represents that. It's still a small percentage of our overall sales, but every year it's growing. And so really learning, really doing that marketing, and listening to the customer, learning about the standards, learning about the common practices, and things like that. That's the biggest part of the project.
Yeah. I mean, again, it is. such a market fail, and all like the historic stories about going into market and not doing the work and really understanding the customer, the differences in buying habits or the right language, phrases. I mean, I'm in Mexico, and you're like, you say caliente or picante, and if you use it one way or another, you use it wrong. So there is so much to just understanding the customers that you're, trying to sell to in a geography. And
Absolutely.
so I think that mindfulness is so important and exciting to
Yeah,
see an increase in business outside of the state and the brand's visibility. So I'm
absolutely.
ask, kind of as we're, getting to the final innings of our conversation, I'm going to ask a look back. Dana Kramer, one of our Red Caffeiners, asked a little bit about, mentioning the flushometer, which I think is what you have been most well known for,
Absolutely.
history. And so what is, being in business, you're going to celebrate like 120 years. Is that next year?
Next year.
20 years, that's a lot. What have been some of the most surprising lessons that you've learned as an organization in an industry, as long as you've been in an industry?
I think that the thing that has struck me the most is that it has been possible for us in the last 15 years to do a significant pivot in how we market our product and who we market it to. And that's all of that insight is based on a friendship that came out of nowhere between a guy named Randy Gallup and my father. Randy is an architect by education and a product designer and entrepreneur. And he had a small business down in Arizona called Stone and Steel that would make custom sinks, custom bars, custom tables, whatever, out of Corian, Swanstone, finer stones of marble and granite, things like that. And he and my father struck up a friendship, and he said, I think this would be a great fit for Sloan. My dad agreed. We acquired the company. We relocated them to Mesa, and it's been just an unbelievable experience for us. It brought us into the fabricated sink space. It got us into mirrors and a lot of other aesthetic accessories and things like that, and afforded us the opportunity to go in and present our products to interior designers and architects, because before that, you're the flush valve guy. You walk in with your flush valve, and the architect's like, "Yeah, I know what that is. I don't need to talk to you." But when you can walk in and talk to them about
Yeah.
creating a vision for the space, you've got an opportunity and you've got a chance. And it coincided really well with a change and I'm sure we all have recognized that at one time or another, bathrooms in commercial buildings and institutions used to all be pretty much the same: 2-inch white tile, white ceramic fixtures, gray partitions, horrible lighting, and all of that. And the design community has taken a real interest in restroom design, and so now you see restrooms in public spaces where you can see the spend, you can see the design style, and everything else. So when we made that pivot, the architectural and design community really embraced it, and that to me is an amazing pivot for a company that's been an institutional products company for 100 plus years. Royal Flush Valve's great. It'll outlast your building, and you can drive nails with it. But a work of art, it probably isn't. So that whole initiative has steered us toward focus on the aesthetics of the products that we offer, and that has had a great result.
Yeah, I mean that's so interesting. I'm a person that could tell you about the bathrooms in every airport I've been to and ones I hate, and it is so at restaurants they're cold or like. But if you have a great bathroom experience, it's absolutely memorable to me as a consumer. So I think that's so interesting, and I agree. I would have not thought about that. So, as you're looking ahead, then is there more innovation and leaning into ancillary product categories that really fit sort of elevating that experience and your brand alongside it?
Absolutely. We are constant now we see those types of architectural decorative products uh, as part of our um, package, and so we're constantly trying to expand it and improve it, and listen to the design community for what's the hot color, shape, whatever, and incorporate those types of things into our design.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, I really am hopeful to get a chance to visit the showroom. I'm sure I will have to ping you for that when I'm back in Chicago, and I can't wait to join you in Mesa for the spring training. It's going to be a cool experience. I've been to the park. It's just such a it's like mini Wrigley, and but it's got its own different vibe, and so I'm really, really looking forward to
Well, we're really looking forward to having you, and what you haven't experienced down there is our tailgate, which is probably one of the best tailgates in sports. So you'll really get a kick out of that. So we're looking forward to having you, Kathy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for sharing so much, really interesting information. I hope everyone agrees with me that you are one of the most interesting men in the world. No, I think my husband was a little jealous after I came home from lunch. I'm like, oh my gosh, you did this and this, and it's such an interesting business story. So with that, I'm going to introduce, our sponsors. We always want to make sure that we are recognizing the partners we have. Before I forget, I want to let everybody know if they want to reach out to you and have an additional question. We did put your contact information, your LinkedIn profile out there. So ping Kirk if you've got additional follow-on questions, and put business as unusual in the subject line so he knows where that's coming from. And then our sponsors, M3 Sales Training and HR Source, and HR Support for Organizations, the Association for Employers. Always appreciate their support of Business as Unusual and our partnership, and can't wait to have them as guest hosts later in the 2025 series. As we're thinking about next month, I'm really excited to talk about this next topic. In March, we're going to be talking about ESOPing. And one of our missions at Red Caffeine is to really educate the marketplace on ways to grow their business and optionality as they're thinking about, maybe even exiting or succeeding their business. And there's been a lot of different ways and a lot of highlighting of private equity, but ESOPing is another alternative for succession planning for owners and employees. And our goal is to really level the playing field for owner operated businesses and educate the market to their optionality. So Gary Gray is a former business runner. So he comes from the same place that Kirk and I do, and he knows what it's like to run an organization day to day. And he ESOPed his business, and he became so expert. He started a company called Tenor ESOP Partners to help other organizations, know their options and evaluate it as a succession strategy for their business. So some of the things that we're going to talk talk about is how ESOPing compares to private equity or a family succession strategy or a management buyout strategy. So really kind of talking through the pros and cons of lots of different exit options. We're also going to talk about, the ability as an ESOP to provide both the owner and employees an opportunity to build wealth or, to achieve wealth in from their organization. So it's a pretty cool winning equation when it's done well. And then we're going to take everyone through this live business case that's going to really outline what an ESOP transaction could look like. So what a kind of a minimum EBITDA would look like, the right, kind of business size to start to consider ESOP as an option. And then we'll take you through, what to expect during the process. And then, really what to expect following the process. Because I think that's where I've heard most organizational leaders, say that things didn't go as well as they had thought because they just weren't really ready and prepared for what was going to happen next. So Gary is probably one of the most, easy to understand presenters on the topic. And so I'm really excited to bring this topic up next. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you again, Kirk, for joining us today. It was just a pleasure, as always, to talk with you. It was so super easy. I hope you didn't find it too painful. And I really hope our audience took a lot away. I know, not all businesses can afford a partnership with the Cubs, but there is something to really thinking about your brand and how to be positioned differently in your marketplace, and leverage something that's unique and authentic to you to be able to beat out the competition. So I hope that our guests took some takeaways away. And then really until next time, I just want to continue to encourage everyone to challenge the unusual. But thank you, Kirk. I will see you soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right.